welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into some truly profound questions that really blur the lines between biology, philosophy, and frankly, some pretty unsettling stuff about existence itself.
Yeah, these are big ones.
You, our listener, sent in questions that got us thinking. Why are diseases often painful? Why can't viruses just live peacefully? And why do they seem to evolve specifically to hurt us?
Fantastic questions, really fundamental.
So our mission today is to unpack these, diving into a fascinating conversation, pulling insights from some really intriguing source material.
It's going to take us from tiny viruses all the way to, well, the nature of existence and even our own minds.
Exactly. Let's jump in. Okay, first big question.
Yeah.
Why disease and pain? It feels so intentional sometimes, doesn't it? Almost cruel.
It absolutely feels that way. But what's fascinating, and maybe counterintuitive, is that pain isn't really the point of the disease.
It's not.
No, it's more of a side effect. Think of it like your nervous system's alarm bell. It's shouting, hey, something's really wrong here.
Okay, an alarm bell. Made you pay attention.
Precisely. To make you stop, rest, avoid more damage. When you get infected, your immune system goes into overdrive, right? Sends cells, creates heat, swelling.
Yeah, inflammation.
Exactly. And part of that involves releasing chemicals like prostaglandins, which basically turn up the sensitivity of your nerve endings. They make that alarm bell impossible to ignore.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting for me. If it's just a side effect, an alarm,
Oh.
does the virus itself ever, benefit from our pain?
Now you're hitting on something quite complex. Sometimes yes, weirdly enough.
How so?
Well, think about a virus that causes coughing. Or diarrhea. Those symptoms are unpleasant, even painful for us.
Definitely.
But they are fantastic ways for the virus to spread to new hosts. So our suffering can actually help the virus replicate and move on.
Wow. So it's like an evolutionary accident that helps them, not deliberate malice.
Exactly. It's a byproduct. The virus isn't thinking, I'll make them cough. It just happens that the versions of the virus that trigger coughing spread better.
Which brings me to the next point. Can viruses even live peacefully? It feels like they're always attacking.
That's a really common feeling, but yeah, many microbes, including viruses, do live peacefully with us. It's called symbiosis or commensalism.
Like the gut microbiome.
Perfect example. Your gut is packed with bacteria, even some viruses that are essential. They help with digestion, make vitamins, even train your immune system.
Okay, so some are good. What else?
Well, think about herpes viruses like HSV6. A huge percentage of people have it. It often just hides in your cells for years, maybe your whole life, no symptoms.
Right, lurking.
And here's the really mind-bending part. Endogenous retroviruses, ERVs.
Here are those.
These are ancient viruses that infected our ancestors millions of years ago. Their genetic code got stuck in our DNA.
Wait, in our DNA?
Yep. About 8% of the human genome is made of this old viral material. And some of it isn't just junk. It actually plays roles in our development, like in the placenta and in immunity.
So part of me is literally ancient virus. That's
It is wild. So when viruses do cause disease, remember, they don't intend to hurt you. Their goal, if you can even call it that, is just replication. Making copies.
by hijacking our cells.
Exactly. They turn our cells into virus factories, and often that process kills the cells. If enough cells die, or if your immune system reacts really strongly.
Then you get symptoms. Fever, fatigue, pain.
Precisely. The harm is usually collateral damage from the replication process or our own defense mechanisms.
Okay, collateral damage. But it still feels so targeted sometimes, like they're evolving to be harmful. How do we square that feeling with this lack of intent?
Right, that's the core issue, isn't it? And it's crucial to repeat. Viruses aren't evolved to hurt us, per se. They're evolved to survive and spread.
Survival of the fittest, but for the virus.
Kind of. Evolution just favors whatever works for spreading. If causing a symptom like a cough or making a rash itchy so you scratch and spread it helps the virus get to a new host,
Then that trait sticks around, even if it hurts us.
exactly. Evolution is blind to our suffering. It only sees what promotes transmission.
And there's that weird balance too, right? Like being too harmful can backfire for the virus.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating trade-off. Think about Ebola. It's incredibly deadly, kills hosts quickly.
Yeah, terrifyingly so.
But that high lethality actually limits its spread sometimes. People die before they can travel far or infect many others.
Okay, compared to something like
COVID-19. It spread much more effectively because many people had mild or no symptoms, allowing them to move around and transmit it silently. From an evolutionary standpoint, for spreading, that's arguably more successful.
Huh. And you mentioned that rabbit virus example.
Right, the myxoma virus in Australia. Introduced to control rabbits, initially killed like 99% of them. Super deadly.
Wow.
But over time, the virus evolved to become less lethal. Why? Because the rabbits were also evolving resistance, and the less deadly strains allowed rabbits to live longer, hop around more, and spread the virus more effectively.
So the virus became nicer to ensure its own survival.
In a way, yes. It reached an evolutionary balance. Less deadly, but better at persisting.
So, stepping back, philosophically, disease feels personal, cruel, but nature isn't actually targeting us.
Not in a conscious way, no. Viruses, bacteria, they don't have desires or malice. They're just biological machines running on genetic code that evolved to replicate. The harm is incidental.
But nature also fights back, right, through us.
Definitely. Our immune systems evolve. We develop vaccines, treatments, change our behaviors. It's a constant evolutionary dance, this intricate arms race, all happening without any central choreographer.
This idea of evolution being this blind process, yet creating such complex outcomes, leads to that even deeper question you raise, listener.
Yeah.
Why does evolution favor spreading at all? Is there a plan? Is there some kind of intelligence behind it?
It really feels like there should be, doesn't it? But here's the mind bender. Evolution doesn't have a goal. It isn't trying to spread anything.
No goal. Then how does it work?
It's much simpler, almost mathematical. Things that happen to be good at spreading, well, they spread. Things that spread leave more copies. Things that leave more copies become more common. That's it.
It's just math and chance over millions of years.
Pretty much. Math, chance, and inheritance over incredibly deep time. There's no mind guiding it.
Okay, you mentioned breaking it down into evolution and 3 laws before. Could you recap that? Because it helps frame this mindless process.
Sure. It's really straightforward. 1, variation. Living things aren't identical. There are random differences.
Okay, mutations, different traits.
2, inheritance. Offspring tend to resemble their parents. These differences get passed down.
Makes sense.
And 3, selection. Some of those variations just happen to help an organism survive and reproduce better in its current environment than others. So those helpful variations become more common over generations.
So it's not striving, it's just filtering.
Exactly, filtering. A virus that happens to make 1,000 copies per host will naturally become more common than one that only makes 5 copies. Not because it wants to, but just because it's better at copying itself. More lottery tickets, basically.
Right. Okay, but then there's that even stranger idea you touched on. Richard Dawkins and the selfish gene. That flips it even more, doesn't it? It's not even about the organism surviving.
Yeah, that's a really powerful, sometimes controversial perspective. Dawkins argued that the fundamental unit of selection isn't the individual organism or even the group, but the gene itself.
The gene. How can a gene be selfish?
It's a metaphor, of course. Genes don't have feelings, but think of genes as patterns of information, like digital code. Their interest is simply to get copied and passed on. Organisms like us, or viruses, or trees are just the vehicles, the survival machines that these genes build to help them replicate.
So we're just elaborate shells for our genes.
In that view, yeah. Evolution favors genes that build better vehicles for their own propagation. It's a subtle but profound shift in thinking.
But why does it still look so purposeful? Why do animals fight and plants compete if it's just genes pulling strings?
Because the genes that build vehicles, which act as if they care about surviving and reproducing vehicles that seek food, avoid danger, find mates, are the genes that get passed on.
Ah, so the appearance of purpose comes from the success of organisms that behave purposefully.
Exactly. Evolution selects for behaviors and structures that lead to survival and reproduction, even if there's no conscious thought behind it. It mimics intention.
Let's bring rabies back into this, because that one feels terrifyingly intentional. How does a mindless virus know how to get into the brain, change behavior, cause aggression, make the host bite, all perfectly designed to spread itself?
It's the ultimate example of this paradox, isn't it? The rabies virus doesn't think, it doesn't plan, it has no concept of a brain or biting.
But it acts like it does. It's like something out of science fiction.
It does. It migrates along nerves to the brain. It specifically affects areas controlling aggression and saliva production.
Right.
It induces hydrophobia. It's horrifyingly precise. But again, it's the result of relentless filtering.
Filtering how?
Think about the countless random mutations that must have occurred in rabies virus ancestors over millennia. Most were useless. Some maybe made the host sleepy, less likely to spread it. Those died out.
Okay.
But occasionally, a random mutation happened to, say, make the virus travel to the salivary glands more efficiently, or slightly increase aggression, or reduce fear.
And those versions spread better.
Exactly. That tiny advantage meant that version left more copies. Over vast amounts of time, only the mutations that, by sheer chance, improved transmission via biting survived and accumulated. It looks like intelligent design, but it's the result of discarding everything that didn't work.
So this is the mindless genius idea, intelligence emerging from a non-intelligent process.
Precisely, like a river finding the path of least resistance to the sea. The river doesn't think, but it carves a complex, efficient path. Evolution is like that. It finds solutions through trial and error on a massive scale.
So where is the intelligence then? Is it just in the process? Can nothingness, like, generate intelligence? That feels almost mystical.
I'd say the intelligence isn't in the virus or in some guiding hand in nature. It's emergent. It arises from the process. Simple rules variation, inheritance, selection repeated over and over can lead to astonishing complexity.
Like building complexity from simple bricks.
Sort of. Or think of the universe as a canvas. Evolution throws paint randomly. Most splashes are meaningless. But the patterns that happen to look like something stable, something that can persist and replicate, those are the ones we see. They look like art, even without an artist.
Okay, so if there's no external artist, no designer,
Huh.
who is the genius that knows all this? The one connecting these dots?
Well, nobody knows everything, obviously, but
Yeah.
you just asked the question. The listener asked the original questions. Maybe the genius isn't out there. Maybe it's consciousness itself looking at the patterns and recognizing them.
Consciousness is part of the pattern.
Perhaps. Carl Jung had this fascinating quote about the unconscious mind. He said it's not just the source of darkness, but also the source of the highest good, not only demonic, but superhuman, spiritual, and divine. Maybe you see the apparent intelligence because your own consciousness is part of that emergent intelligence.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to chew on. And this connects to another observation you made, listener, that things like ideas, thoughts, habits, they also seem to behave like this. They want to take over, dominate. Is that just a feeling, or have others noticed this?
Oh, absolutely. You've hit on something many depth thinkers across different fields have explored. This idea that thoughts, habits, ideologies, even beliefs aren't just passive things in our heads. They act like, well, like living mental organisms.
Mental organisms. How so?
They seem to want to survive, spread from mind to mind, and compete for dominance, just like genes or viruses.
This sounds like Dawkins again with his concept of memes.
Exactly. He coined the term meme not just for internet pictures, but for any unit of cultural information spread by imitation. An idea, a fashion, a tune, a catchphrase.
And they evolve like genes.
He argued yes. Memes replicate when you tell someone an idea. They mutate. Ideas change slightly as they spread, and they compete for limited resources, our attention, our memory space.
So some memes are harmless, like nursery rhymes.
Right, but others can be much more potent, even harmful. Think about ideologies, conspiracy theories, or even deeply ingrained negative thought patterns. They can spread like wildfire, acting like mental parasites.
Dawkins had that controversial line about faith infecting children like a virus.
He did, and it highlights his point. Memes spread based on their ability to get themselves copied, not necessarily because they're true or good or beneficial to the host mind. Their survival is independent of our well-being.
And Carl Jung, you mentioned him earlier. He had ideas about this too, about thoughts having power.
Yes, very much so. Jung believed our psyche isn't entirely under our conscious control. He talked about the collective unconscious, a deeper layer shared by all humans, filled with archetypes.
Archetypes like the hero, the shadow.
Exactly. The mother, the trickster. He saw these as powerful, autonomous patterns or forces within the psyche that can possess the ego. They shape our thoughts, feelings, behaviors. He famously said, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people.
Ideas have people. That really captures it, like we're vessels again.
In a sense, it suggests these mental patterns have their own energy, their own agenda almost.
And this isn't just a Western idea either, right? What about other traditions?
You see echoes of this in ancient Buddhist psychology, too. They often describe the mind like a turbulent ocean with thoughts constantly arising like waves.
Wholesome and unwholesome thoughts.
Right. Some thoughts rooted in kindness, clarity, are considered wholesome. Others rooted in greed, hatred, delusion, are unwholesome. The key practice, mindfulness, is about learning to observe these thoughts without getting swept away.
So recognizing they have their own momentum, that you aren't your thoughts.
Precisely. It's about seeing that thoughts and mental habits arise, they have energy, they want a loop, but you don't have to identify with them. You can be the awareness behind them. It implies thoughts have a life of their own, competing for your attention.
And does modern science back any of this up? Neuroscience.
It offers a really interesting parallel. We know habits and recurring thoughts correspond to specific neural pathways in the brain.
Neurons that fire together, wire together.
That's the one. The more you think a thought or perform a habit, the stronger that pathway becomes, the more automatic it gets. Your brain loves efficiency. It conserves energy by using these default paths.
Whether the path is good for you or not.
Exactly. The brain doesn't judge. It just reinforces the well-trodden path. So, in a very real physical sense, your habits and dominant thought patterns are competing to control your behavior. They're carving deeper and deeper grooves in your brain.
So thinking of the mind as an ecosystem, like a garden or a forest, that metaphor holds up.
It's a powerful one, I think. You have all these different species thoughts, fears, hopes, beliefs, habits, all competing for resources. And the main resource,
Your attention.
your attention. It's like sunlight in the garden. Whatever you consistently give your attention to grows stronger. Weeds or flowers.
So practices like meditation or therapy are like mental landscaping, choosing what to cultivate.
That's a great way to put it. Actively managing the ecosystem. Because left unattended, the most dominant thoughts or habits aren't necessarily the ones that make you happy or wise. They're just the best competitors.
Okay, so genes are selfish, ideas are viral, habits compete. It seems like this pattern of mindless competition and survival runs deep.
It really does seem to be a fundamental principle operating at multiple levels.
And speaking of things that are unsettling and maybe operate by these rules,
Mhm.
you, listener, mentioned recently learning about prions and finding them deeply disturbing.
Ah, yes, prions. They are genuinely bizarre and unsettling. Misfolded proteins causing chain reactions of misfolding in the brain.
Right, leading to diseases like mad cow or Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. If that surprised you, listener, well, buckle up. Because nature is packed with things that are just as strange or even stranger.
Oh, absolutely. The world of biology is weirder than any science fiction. Ready for a quick tour of some other mind benders?
Let's do it. Give us the highlights.
Okay, number 1. Toxoplasma gondii. We mentioned parasites. This one infects rats, makes them lose their fear of cats, so they get eaten. The parasite needs the cat gut to reproduce.
Mind control. And it infects humans, too.
Yes, very common. Some studies hint it might subtly influence our personality, maybe risk-taking behavior. Still debated, but creepy.
Creepy indeed. What's next?
2. Zombie caterpillars. Caused by baculoviruses. These viruses force caterpillars to climb high up on plants.
Why?
So when the virus liquefies their insides, the goo rains down, spreading the virus onto leaves below to infect more caterpillars. It uses gravity.
Okay, that's pure horror movie material. Number 3.
We touched on this. Endogenous retroviruses. Remember, 8% of our genome. Dead viruses embedded in our DNA from millions of years ago. Some are actually essential now, like one involved in forming the placenta. We are part of virus.
Still blows my mind. 4.
Viroids, even simpler than viruses. Just a tiny loop of RNA. No protein coat, nothing else. Yet they cause diseases in plants. It's like pure naked information acting like life.
Information is disease. Wow. Okay, 5.
The infamous Ophiocordyceps fungus, the real Last of Us fungus, infects ants, manipulates their behavior to climb to a specific height and bite down on a leaf fan.
The death grip.
Exactly. Then the fungus erupts from the ant's head to release spores optimally. Total body snatching.
Shudder. 6.
Fatal familial insomnia. You mentioned prions. This is a genetic prion disease. People inherit a gene that causes proteins in their brain to misfold. They completely lose the ability to sleep, and, well, they die within months to a year. No cure.
Just,
Unimaginable.
okay, something less terrifying maybe.
7. How about resilience? Tardigrades, water bears, microscopic critters that can survive almost anything. Vacuum of space, boiling, freezing, extreme radiation, decades of dehydration.
Right, the ultimate survivors. How do they do it?
They can basically turn into glass using special proteins to protect their cells, then just add water and they reanimate. Incredible.
Truly incredible. 8.
Bacteriophages, or dysphages, these are viruses that only infect and kill bacteria. They look like little lunar landers.
And they inject their DNA?
Yep, then multiply inside and burst the bacterium open. People are seriously looking into using them as an alternative to antibiotics, especially for resistant infections, virus versus bacteria.
Cool. 9.
Speaking of resistance, antibiotic resistance via plasmids. Bacteria have this amazing ability to share genes directly using little loops of DNA called plasmids.
Like trading cheat codes.
Exactly like trading cheat codes.
Yeah.
If one bacterium develops resistance to an antibiotic, it can just pass that gene along to its neighbors. That's why resistance spreads so terrifyingly fast.
A major global threat. Okay, last one. 10.
Let's go deep underground. The dark biosphere. Entire ecosystems living miles below the Earth's surface, totally cut off from sunlight.
What do they live on?
Chemicals from rocks, hydrogen gas, maybe even radiation. They're microbes, sometimes existing incredibly slowly. It shows life can exist in places we never imagined, maybe giving us clues about alien life.
Wow. From mind-controlling parasites to rock-eating microbes miles down. Nature is definitely stranger and sometimes more horrifying than fiction.
It really underscores that complexity, even horror, doesn't require intelligence or intent in the way we usually think of it. These are just the results of those evolutionary processes we talked about, playing out in bizarre ways.
So we've gone from the pain of a simple infection all the way to the mindless genius of evolution, seeing how ideas and habits can act like viruses in our minds and just skim the surface of nature's deep weirdness. What a journey.
And the consistent thread seems to be that what persists, what survives the filter of time and competition, ends up looking designed, looking intentional.
Because all the failures are gone. We only see the winners, the survivors.
Precisely. That's why genes appear selfish, why ideas spread like infections, why the universe can seem intelligent even without a conscious designer behind it all. The patterns that last just work.
And what this whole deep dive really highlights for me, sparked by your questions, listener, is how these really profound questions often live right at that edge, where hard science meets our deepest feelings about meaning, purpose, and our place in it all.
It's a fascinating space to explore. And maybe, just maybe, the universe doesn't have an intention in the way we think of it. But perhaps you, your consciousness, asking these questions, experiencing these feelings, perhaps that's how intention arises within the universe.
Or maybe the genius isn't out there to be found, but it's right here, in the capacity to ask, to wonder, to try and understand these incredible patterns.
A thought to ponder, definitely.
Thank you for joining us on this really quite mind-bending journey today. Keep asking those deep, vital questions. They matter.